An amazing way to grow your influence and your income online is to publish books. Now, we could talk for hours about the publishing process and whether or not you should self-publish or publish traditionally. I will have something to say about self-publishing versus traditional publishing by the end of this video to give you some first steps as you think about your books. But I do want to talk about some tips and strategies that you can have so that you can move forward and actually begin this process. Because truly, if you consider two brands exactly the same, one of them has a book, the other one does not, which one do you think people are going to gravitate toward? The person with the book, because it's that knowledge, that experience packaged into something like a book like this, which people can gain value from and then want to build a deeper relationship with that author from. This book, Will It Fly, was published in 2016. It went on to become a Wall Street Journal bestseller, yes, as a self-published book. But more than that, this book and the components within it and the things tied to it have generated nearly $500,000. I'm gonna unpack that for you in just a minute. And then this book here, Superfans, which was recently published in 2019, is actually picking up even more steam than Will It Fly had. And this is now answering a lot of people's questions that they have about how to build a business online today. So it's helping serve my audience by answering questions for them and giving them some steps to move forward with too. I even have my book published in different countries, which is pretty cool. So what a cool way to influence not just people in your own locale, but all around the world. In this video, I wanna share with you many of the benefits that can come with publishing a book and tips on how to get started the right way. And make sure you stick around to the end because I'm gonna give you my #1 tip, something that I've included in both Superfans and Will It Fly that is helping me with my business that is actually outside of the book. More on that at the end. So publishing books has done many things for my brand and my business, and it can do the same for you. #1, it helps you build a lot of authority. It's a great way to take a lot of the information in your brain, organize it in a way that allows for other people to consume on the go, whether they're reading the book or listening to it via audio. The more people dive into your book, the more people are actually spending time with you. And of course, getting people to know you, to like you, and trust you is a huge factor in the success that we have online. In addition to that, it should absolutely be understood that your book can get people results. In fact, I wouldn't write a book if that wasn't actually the case. And of course, I'm talking about nonfiction here. Fiction can help people in many different kinds of ways, but we're talking more about nonfiction. If you have information, if you have a platform, and you want to share and amplify that message to others too. Now, this information that you have based on your experience and based on what you've learned over time, packaged into a book, becomes an easy way for you to actually scale that message and have it be shared with more people and have it be shared amongst each other. A lot of people who read books like to share those books with other people too. And yes, you could potentially publish the same content on different content platforms like a podcast, a YouTube channel, or even on a blog, but there's just something about a book specifically, whether it's a physical book or an audiobook, that has just more meaning and more of an experience when it comes to the overall listening and or reading of that book. And like I said earlier, this book, if done correctly, and I'm gonna share some tips for you about how to do this, it can make you a lot of money as well. It's not guaranteed, of course, but it can play a role in how people find you and how people get involved in other aspects of your business too. In many cases, it is a sort of a lead magnet, if you will, for many businesses out there who have other offerings, whether they're a coach or a software company or have other online programs and such. The first tip that I have for you when it comes to writing a book is you need to know who are you writing this for. The more that you can understand the person, the reader on the other end, the future person who's going to be reading this book and getting value from it, the more that you can actually add value to what it is this person's going to have read. In many cases, it may be as simple as answering a specific question and going really deep into that. It could be about a principle that you might have or a proprietary system that you've created to walk people through into a specific result. And that's really important. What is the result that this book will offer? After people have experience reading this book, what's actually going to be the end game for them and how is it going to help them? When you can understand that, you can reverse engineer all the things inside the book as well as the title that's going to capture their attention to have them go deep with you. Speaking of title, really important, and this is often and maybe a little bit controversial, but I think you should start with what the title and the tagline is going to be. Because if the information inside the book is great, unless it has a good title and tagline to really capture a person's attention, people aren't going to be reading inside the book. They're going to be passing over it for something else. So we need to spend some time nailing a title and a tagline. Those should portray together what it is that this book is going to do for a person. Take, for example, Will It Fly? How to test your next business idea so you don't waste your time and money. It tells you what we're going to talk about and also why, so you don't waste your time and money. It could be as simple as that. The best exercise I could recommend to help you get inspired as far as what your title and tagline should be and how it could flow is to actually go to Amazon, just look up a bunch of different books in all different kinds of categories, and just start brainstorming. Start putting all your ideas on paper or on Post-it notes, move them around. It's gonna take some time. And yes, it is a struggle for many, but of course, if you don't pick a title and a tagline, your book's never gonna get out to anybody. So you gotta make a decision at some point and make it be something that can capture a person's attention, to be a head turner, if you will, when it ends up potentially in a bookstore one day. Number 2, let's talk about the outline of your book and the process of actually creating that outline, because that then informs what the rest of the book is gonna be about. So outlining your book after you nail the title and the tagline is a process that can often be very difficult for people. But I've come up with a strategy that works really well for how I plan anything, and it involves Post-it notes. Writing on Post-it notes all different kinds of ideas about anything and everything that I think should be in this book, because our brains do a good job of coming up with ideas, but a terrible job of organizing them and creating hierarchy. It's only when you see all these ideas out there on the table can you then begin to organize them. You can begin to throw things away that aren't necessary. You can begin to add things to complete gaps that might be in there. And then over time, you get these clusters and things that actually make sense to come together. Those clusters become the different sections and or chapters of the book. And then each of those Post-it notes can become a part of a story or part of the chapter that you can write as you begin your process. As you're going through the outlining process, I would actually get other people involved too. Not only just colleagues and friends who can help you who understand this information, but even other people who might one day be a reader too. Your outline of your book is sort of like a prototype for a project. You can actually share this with them up front to help them actually poke holes in it and ask questions so that you are more guided as the writer, as the creator, as to what eventually should end up in there. And then comes the writing process, probably one of the hardest things to do if you especially aren't a writer by nature. For me, I struggled really hard with writing because I put the book on this pedestal of something so serious that I had to get every word perfect as I was creating it. It was very easy for me to write a blog post. I'd been blogging for a while, but writing a book, it felt completely different. And it wasn't until I finally treated each of the chapters in this book like their own individual blog post, seeing the little chapter as opposed to the big picture, that I started to write and get my momentum. And after that momentum started, things started to roll. Because it's sort of like physics. Things at rest tend to stay at rest. And if you aren't practiced, if you aren't habitually writing, it's gonna be very difficult to get you into that habit. So I would get started even right now, even if you don't know what your book is about, just start to get into that daily writing practice. Just write 200 to 300 words every single day about anything, just to get those muscles going, because once you get going, it begins to be a lot easier. And the final point about writing is this: the first draft is gonna be messy. It's gonna be a bunch of stories and ideas that kind of don't fit in anywhere they should be, and it's gonna feel like a puzzle that you have all the pieces for, but they might not be put together the right way, and that's okay. If you tried to make your first draft the last draft, you're not gonna get through it because your editor brain is different than the creative side of your brain. So use that creative side of your brain to just literally write whatever. You gotta get through that first draft, get through your outline, write whatever. Don't worry about making it perfect. As soon as you get through that first draft, things start to fall into place and you can start refining what this thing is. As I once heard, writing your first draft is sort of like getting a whole bunch of sand. And then once you have all this sand, then you can start chipping away and creating that really beautiful sand castle afterwards. But you gotta get that sand first, and that's where all the ideas, all the stories, all the creativity has to come out, and that's gonna make your book a little bit better. The final tip I have for you is this. I remember when I wrote my book, Will It Fly, I was in the middle of reading a lot of Malcolm Gladwell books. And because of that, I felt like I had to write like Malcolm Gladwell. And so I thought I was gonna do a lot of case studies and read these research papers and try to incorporate that into my work in really clever ways like Malcolm Gladwell does. And unfortunately, it was just very difficult for me to do that. And it wasn't until I realized that I had to write like me that things really did start to flow. So although reading is a great way to increase and improve your writing, trying to write like somebody else is not gonna work. You gotta write like you. And for me, it was incorporating a lot of personal stories and storytelling into my books that help teach these lessons. For you, it might be something different. You're not gonna find that out until you get pen to paper or type away on your keyboard. Just get started, start writing, and I promise you the momentum will kick in. And always remember the reader on the other end, who's gonna be reading this and enjoying it down the road, because that's really who we're doing this for. To finish off, on the marketing side of things, I wanna give you that one tip that I was sharing with you that was so important, that's really helped Will It Fly earn $500,000 over time. And that's the idea of understanding what the next step for the reader is gonna be. How are we gonna get people from the books that they read to our email list and into our programs or other sales mechanisms? And the important thing to realize is that Amazon, if you're selling your books on Amazon, which obviously you should because that's where people go and buy books, they're not gonna give you the list of people who read those books. You have to, in some way, shape, or form, capture those email addresses and those connections from the readers in the book. How did we do this? Well, inside of Will It Fly and Superfans, we have companion courses, something that people can get for free that gives them access to some information that'll take their experience in the book even further. And from there, we can then send them messages and help them through different processes. For Will It Fly in particular, it drives people into a particular course and into our email list to serve them in even different kinds of ways. And I'd highly recommend you at least think about having something in your book that people will want to get, even right from the start, that'll put them into a list that can help you help them even more. Because as always, your earnings are a byproduct of how well you serve your audience. But if you don't have that contact, how do you know you're going to be serving them or not? Get that email, and you can go from there. We have more information about collecting email addresses here, and we'll have more information below in the video too. And if you want more information about starting your book writing process with even more detail, even more hand-holding across the way, you'll find more information down below of this video too. Good luck to you. You've got a book in you. Everybody does. It's just a matter of putting yourself out there and not being afraid to try. You got this.